I don't know, almost like...
Ross Geller is the sweet, hopeless romantic of friends. And at the start, he seems like the most grown-up friend, thanks to his focused career, living on his own without a roommate, and the fact that he's been married.
It's what grown-ups do.
But looking back, we notice that Ross is troubled by a number of problems underneath his stable surface.
I'm fine.
At times, to an outside observer, he might appear totally neurotic and unhinged.
Oh my God, you are so paranoid.
Am I?
Ross's anxiety comes from being a romantic idealist who wants so desperately to settle down and start a happy family.
I just want to be married again.
Ross feels powerless because this isn't happening for him. But the truth is, he needs to work through his issues before he's ready for that.
I think maybe it's time you put Ross under the microscope.
So Ross's arc is about learning that the road to a stable family life can be rockier than expected, and that's okay. Before we go on, be sure to hit subscribe and click the bell to get notifications on all of our new videos. The punchline about Ross is, of course, his complicated romantic history, namely his 3 divorces.
Hey, what do you guys think about this? Ross, the divorce force.
He's a serial monogamist who puts his love life first, but his relationships don't work out the way he wants them to. He's so fixated on his desire to be happy in love
And what is life without love?
that for the longest time he doesn't understand that he's part of the problem.
I don't know what you're talking about. I am not a crazy, jealous person.
Ross's first marriage to Carol obviously couldn't have lasted because of her sexuality, but the fact that it didn't occur to him she might be closeted makes us wonder how deeply he was looking at who Carol really was.
We could have a threesome.
I love that idea.
As we see later, Ross has a tendency to idealize his romantic partners. He leaps into believing he's in a true forever love, often before he even really knows the other person.
We decided to get married.
And he pursues relationships that we can see from the outside are never going to work. Meanwhile, Ross has a lot of trust issues, which partly stem from his failed marriage to Carol.
93, he was very trusting. Then 94 hit, Carol left him, and bam, paranoid city.
After Ross finally gets together with his dream woman, Rachel, this leftover insecurity can sometimes poison their relationship when Ross can't handle her building her own career and gives in to his jealousy.
So it's hard for me to believe I'm not gonna, someone else isn't gonna take you away.
He can sometimes be guilty of controlling behavior.
Your loyal, loving boyfriend, Ross.
Ross feels a constant need to be right.
Okay, maybe this is so hard because there aren't 50 states.
He even gives up the chance to get back together with Rachel because he can't stand the idea of losing the "we were on a break" argument.
We were on a break!
Giving up the need to always be right is essential for having a healthy relationship. But even though that outcome is what Ross wants the most, he really struggles to let go of his drive to win all arguments and assert his intellectual superiority.
And by the way, Y-O-U''RE means you are. Y-O-U-R means you're.
For someone who's so driven by love, Ross can also be surprisingly reckless in his love life. He sleeps with someone just hours after he and Rachel go on a break. And wherever you fall on the "were they on a break" question, it's a dumb thing to do if you still want things to work out. Ross insists that this kind of behavior is completely out of the ordinary for him.
I don't cheat, right? That's not me. I'm not Joey.
But this isn't totally true. He does tend to fall into a pattern of crazy behavior when he's in a relationship. Just look at how he acts with Emily.
He's with Emily at a bed and breakfast in Vermont.
What? Oh my God!
He proposes to her after knowing her for only 6 weeks, and then he says the wrong name at their wedding.
Take thee, Rachel.
Ross struggles to be comfortable with himself.
He made a startling discovery.
He hasn't let go of being an unpopular nerd in high school. Even if he and Rachel are each other's lobsters down the road, we do wonder why he's so hopelessly in love with the queen bee of his high school before he even knows her. Maybe it's just true love, but it could also reflect his insecurities about not being popular and socially accepted.
You are a tough guy. You're the toughest paleontologist I know.
In the present, Ross seems hung up on the fear that he's not man enough.
Dude, you're not even man enough to order the channel that carries the sport.
He flips out about his son Ben playing with a Barbie.
American hero, I'm G.I. Joe. Drop the bar, drop the bar.
But Monica reveals that Ross's overreaction probably comes from shame about the way he used to play with stereotypical girl stuff.
So he's a Barbie, big deal. Used to dress up like a woman.
Later, Ross can't wrap his mind around the idea of Emma having a male nanny.
He is too sensitive.
But it comes out that this is because his father questioned Ross's masculinity when he found the boy alone playing with dinosaurs.
He says, what are you doing with those things? What's wrong with you? Why aren't you outside playing like a real boy?
And Ross has a somewhat cringeworthy habit of making passive-aggressive jokes about Carol and Susan's relationship.
As in, I now pronounce you wife and wife, Mary?
In season 4, he freaks out at the idea of Emily spending time with Susan.
Susan's gay. They're being gay together.
Ross's hang-ups about sexuality aren't such a great look in 2018.
Who here likes Ross?
But there's also another, more accepting side to Ross's personality that comes out when it matters most.
Thank you.
It seems like Ross's emotional baggage is the only thing stopping him from being this caring, generous person all the time. Ross's whole life from adolescence on is shaped by the fact that he's in love with Rachel, and for the longest time, she doesn't return the feeling. This is really sad if we think about it.
I don't get it.
And it helps us forgive Ross if he can be a little crazy sometimes. So maybe almost all of Ross's problems stem from the burden of feeling unrequited love for so many years.
It's always been you, Rach.
Ross gets himself into trouble when he tries to ignore his feelings for Rachel instead of working through them. For all of season 1, he never tells her how he feels. Then he rushes into a relationship with Julie because the guys tell him to get over Rachel.
Forget about her. He's right, man. Please, move on.
Later, he jumps into the relationship with Emily, again because of Rachel, who seems to be moving on after their breakup.
I thought we had moved on. I thought we'd gotten to a place where we could be happy for each other. I mean, was that just me?
Then when he and Emily get married and he says Rachel's name at the altar,
Take thee, Rachel.
he insists that there's no deeper meaning to this.
I can understand why Emily would think it meant something, because it was you, but it absolutely didn't. It didn't!
But it's hard to imagine anyone ever really buying that. He's so deep in denial that even after Rachel tells him
I'm still in love with you.
he's fixated on proving that his marriage to Emily isn't a total failure. By the time he drunkenly marries Rachel in Las Vegas at the end of season 5, it's blatantly obvious that he's acting on repressed love for her. Yet he's buried these feelings so far down that he can't acknowledge the truth everyone else sees.
But he's obviously still in love with this Rachel girl.
When he doesn't tell Rachel that they're still married,
I didn't get the annulment.
What?
We're still married. Don't tell Rachel. See you later.
this is probably the height of his denial and repressed feelings, coupled with that need to be right and not face failure, coming out in dysfunctional behavior.
I'm still your wife! What, were you just never gonna tell me? What the hell is wrong with you?
What's so heartwarming about Ross, though, is that in spite of all of his doomed relationships, he never gives up on his dream of true love.
I know my marriages didn't exactly work out, but, I loved being that committed to another person.
Because this is the essence of who Ross is. A lover, a genuinely sweet person with a big heart who feels most himself when he's committed to someone else. And being with his true love, Rachel, is what brings out the best, most lovable version of Ross. When they're first dating, he's a truly adoring boyfriend who will do anything for her. He stands up for her at Barry and Mindy's wedding.
It did take a lot of courage for Rachel to come here tonight.
He's prepared to drink a glass of fat to get her to forgive him after a fight.
Cheers.
Okay, I'll go.
And even after they're broken up, Ross continues to put her first. In season 3, he gives up a great opportunity to be on TV because Rachel needs to go to the hospital.
Because I knew that if I told you, you'd make me go, and I knew you needed someone to be with you tonight.
And in season 6, he decides not to pursue anything with her sister, Jill, because he's still holding out hope of being with Rachel again one day.
Look, I don't know if anything is ever going to happen with us again, ever. But I don't want to know that it never could.
So over all these years, it can be really hard for Ross that it takes Rachel so much longer to feel what he does.
You were worth the wait. And I don't just mean tonight.
And after seeing how happy he is with her, it's no wonder he can't give up and go home when it comes to what they have. Ross is a lot like his sister, Monica. We know they're both competitive, but Ross is also a perfectionist and a control freak, and this is especially directed into his love life. He can't face imperfection in his relationships. That's why he so often can't see that a new partner isn't right for him. He latches onto quick fixes for things that are wrong in his life.
Okay, maybe it wasn't my best decision, but I just couldn't face another failed marriage.
At what point did you think this was a successful marriage?
Like his sister, Ross needs to learn how to accept that life doesn't always go according to plan. He finally gives up his facade of stability after taking a bunch of personal hits. His second marriage has failed, he's been evicted.
Hey, roomies!
And after blowing up at his boss for eating his sandwich, he's forced to go on sabbatical.
It's gonna be weird not having a job for a while, but I definitely don't care about my sandwich.
He goes through a pretty long period of depression where he makes a bunch of questionable decisions.
Man, can't anything go right in my life?
Ross, you left your scarf in the...
Mental Geller. Yeah. I've always wanted a cool nickname like that.
But Ross needs this time to wallow in his emotions and stop trying to make his life perfect before he can rebuild as a more stable person. And Ross does start getting closer and closer to his happy ending as he starts accepting the messiness of life. He finds joy in co-parenting with Carol and then Rachel, even though having 2 kids with 2 different women, neither of whom he's married to, is not how he envisioned fatherhood.
I always had this picture of me and my next wife in bed on Sunday, and my kid comes running in and leaps up onto the bed, and we all read the paper together.
In the late seasons of Friends, he's finally learned to be less rigid and deal with life's curveballs instead of just feeling sorry for himself. When he reunites with Rachel in the series finale,
I got off the plane.
he even jokes about his "we were on a break" hangup,
Unless we're on a break.
showing he's at least partially outgrown that obsession with being right. Ross finally has his dream family, made up of 2 great kids and the love of his life. The bumpiness of the journey to get here has made Ross stronger. So he's up to the challenge of having the mature and meaningful relationship he's always wanted.
You know, it was like one of those things you think is never gonna happen, and then it does, and it's everything you want it to be. 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi.
I'm Deborah. I'm Susanna, and we're the creators of Screen Prism.
If you like our videos, please subscribe. Down there.